Okay, so we have here Nathaniel Hawthorne as our next piece. Nathaniel Hawthorne, whose primary works include The Twice Told Tales, The Scarlet Letter, The House of the Seven Gables, mostly in the mid-1800s. Hawthorne rounds off a Puritan cycle in American writing, the belief in the existence of an active evil, the devil, and in the sense of determinism, which is the concept of predestination, that we know we're going to heaven, or that God knows we're going to heaven or going to hell. So there's this kind of sense that our destiny is already set for us. Hawthorne's use of psychological analysis in a pre-Freud mode is of interest today. In themes and style, Hawthorne's writings looks ahead to people like Henry James, William Faulkner, and Robert Warren. Major themes in his works, especially in our own piece that we're reading, that you read this time, Young Goodman Brown, but in all of his other major works as well, are themes like alienation, in which a character is in a state of isolation because of self-cause or society's cause, or sometimes a combination of himself and society. Initiation, which involves attempts of an alienated character to get rid of his isolated condition. Problems of guilt, a character's sense of guilt forced by the puritanical heritage or by society. Also this kind of idea of guilt versus innocence. And you can see this especially in Young Goodman Brown. Continuing the major themes, pride. Hawthorne treats pride as kind of evil. He illustrates the following aspects of pride in various characters. For example, in Young Goodman Brown, we see spiritual pride. He's proud of his religious beliefs. We also see the theme of Puritan New England, which is used as a background setting for many of his stories, including Young Goodman Brown. Allegory is another one that we see in Young Goodman Brown, not so much the Italian background. But allegory, Hawthorne's writing is kind of allegorical, didactic, and moralistic. So we can see things like, his wife, Faith, kind of being an allegory. Other themes includes the individual versus society, self-fulfillment versus accommodation or frustration, hypocrisy versus integrity, love versus hate, exploitation versus hurting, and fate versus free will. That's another big one for Young Goodman Brown. Hawthorne, he's college educated. He was very familiar with European writers, and of course was very influenced by many Puritan writers, like Cotton Mather being the most famous. Hawthorne displayed a love for allegory and symbol. He dealt with tensions involving light versus dark, warm versus cold, faith versus doubt, heart versus mind, internal versus external worlds. So you see a lot of this kind of tension in his works, including Young Goodman Brown. His writing is representative of the time period of 19th century, and thus in the mainstream due to his use of nature, its primitiveness, and as a source of inspiration. Also his use of the exotic, the Gothic, and the antiquarian, especially the Gothic. He was one of the original Gothic writers. A lot of his work has that Gothic tendency. Influences on Hawthorne. Salem, particularly the Salem witch trials. He was kind of obsessed with Salem in a lot of his life. Some of this was from his Puritan family background. One of his fathers was Judge Hawthorne, who sat on the Salem witch trials in 1692, and that had this kind of permanent influence on Hawthorne. He had a belief in the existence of the devil. He thought the devil was real, that you couldn't have the devil you couldn't have God without the devil. And a belief in determinism. He felt that God knew everything, so God knew whether you were going to heaven or going to hell. In Young Goodman Brown, we see the theme of humankind's hidden wickedness. There's kind of an evil in the village, and an underlying wickedness among these characters that seem outwardly so religious and good. The technique uses a striking climax versus kind of an overall mood. Irony is big in this story, the repressed and concealed wickedness of humanity. You know, these people all seem very religious and righteous, and underneath of it, there's a wickedness that comes out and destroys everything. So you have a surprise ending to the story. Our hero, young Goodman Brown, leaves his wife on the pretense of going into a business trip into the forest, or meeting with a business partner, but plans to attend a devil-worshipping orgy in the forest. He is astonished to discover that his sweet, innocent wife is one of the devil worshippers, as well as all the pious people in the town. So, some major images of young Goodman Brown. Salem, the Salem village. It was the center of the witchcraft delusion in the witching times of 1692, and it shows the populace of Salem village, whose chief in authority, as well as obscure young citizens like Brown, enticed by fiendish shapes in the frightful solitude of superstitious fear. So the whole idea of the witch trials and the hidden evilness of Salem is something that is very enticing to Hawthorne, and he uses it as an inspiration in this short story. Young Goodman Brown, according to one critic, is everyman. The bargain he struck with Satan is the universal one. Initially, he is a naive and immature young man who fails to understand the gravity of the step he has taken, which is succeeded by the presumably adult determination to resist his own evil impulses. Another critic, Fogel, writes that he is a naive young man who accepts both society in general, and his fellow men as individuals in their own valuation, who is in one terrible night confronted with the vision of human evil. Faith. Levi says faith is at once an allegorical idea, Faith being young Goodman Brown's wife. She is at once an allegorical idea and the means by which the idea is inverted. Not the least terrifying aspect of the story is the insinuation that Faith has made her own independent covenant with the devil. There is a faint suggestion that her complicity may be prior to and deeper than Brown's. If he, meaning Brown, believed in the certainty of depravity and only the possibility of salvation, as the Puritan Catechism teaches, he would know that even so righteous a person as Faith is corrupt and not necessarily of the elect, appearances notwithstanding. So what does that mean here? Well, Faith presumes to be this innocent, righteous woman. But the question is, no one can know what's in her heart. And what brings about Goodman Brown's temptation and questioning is this idea that the devil that he meets presents to him, that you don't know what's in someone else's heart. That he, the devil, could easily have made a deal with anyone, and they would appear pious on the outside, but only God can know what's on the inside. So we have a lot of motifs in this story. One of the big ones is the forest. Hawthorne emphasizes the split between convention and unconscious by having Brown move from the town to the country as he follows his impulses. The deeper he moves into the forest, the more completely he becomes one with his evil. Now, in this particular story, the forest presents a motif that is a little questionable. For the Puritans, the wilderness wasn't this ideal natural phenomenon that has a sense of innocence to it, but rather the forest holds evil and predators and bad things that go bump in the night. So going into the forest was kind of like going into the underworld, the hell. So as Hawthorne leaves his city that he knows so well, he meets the devil, the guy with the snake cane. And remember, that image is often used for the devil. He sits on a stump, which is another image that the devil often presents. And this old man then takes young Goodman Brown, our good man, into the woods, hell, and presents him with the true heart of man. That all of these humans have made deals with him for their own righteousness so that they can have power or money or love. And in return, they gave the devil their soul. And that's what young Goodman Brown sees. He sees that you don't know what's inside a person's heart, and that anyone can make a deal with the devil. He becomes disenchanted with humanity after he sees that even Faith, his beloved Faith, has made a deal. And the devil tells him that, old men have made deals so that they could bed young maids, and widows killed husbands for the property, and young women killed aborted babies in the devil's name. All of this happened so people could get power and fame and money. And none of it is something that we know. And what happens is young Goodman Brown comes out of the forest not believing in the power and the humanity of man, but in believing that mankind can sell itself out, that they can make deals with the devil. And all he sees are sinners and people that are self-destructive. And he can no longer have faith. So what do we see from a character point of view? So here are some references that you can look at to find more on young Goodman Brown. But as far as characters go, does young Goodman Brown change from the beginning of the story to the end? If he does, then he's a round character. And that change is important, because is it a positive change or is it a negative change? In young Goodman Brown's case, it may not be positive. And what about Faith? Is she the same person? That's a much harder question, because Faith appears on the outside to be the same. But young Goodman Brown thinks he's seen Faith's heart. And in her heart, she's made a deal with the devil. So we don't really know. The only two characters we really know in this story are young Goodman Brown, because he tells us his experience, and he has changed for the negative, and the devil, who has remained the same and will remain the same forever. The other people in the village, from Faith to all of the other villagers, they've only changed in the eyes of young Goodman Brown. So if what he experienced in the woods is true, then they have changed. If what he experienced in the woods was all in his imagination, then they've remained the same. You, the reader, have to decide. So again, remember, your journal this week is to take one of the characters and analyze them. All right, well, we're off to the next short story.